Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to another Walking Dead video. So I want to focus on The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live, and I want to ask the question, can there be a season 2? Will there be a season 2? And what could they even focus on if there was going to be a season 2? Or like ignore the season 2 part to it. I just want to focus on like what's next. Like what is the next part here? And just like a lot of the loose story ends that are sort of out there and whatnot for The Walking Dead. So obviously before we go any further, I do have to warn you that this video will contain spoilers for The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live, I guess the finale, right? And yeah, definitely make sure to be a subscriber if you want to get all my Walking Dead content like this. Tonight, I'll be doing a video breaking down the very ending scene. I'm going to give my thoughts on the whole entire thing there because, again, like, I don't like the episode. Like, I think everyone mostly agrees that the final scene was amazing. I still think it could have been done better, though. Like, there's little things about it where I'm like, I wanted more dialogue on this. And I think, to me, though, that shows that if you were to do a season 2, that's what you could focus on, is more scenes with Rick and Judith and just like what would that story be next, right? But that was really all it was. I mean, I think overall, I really like the scene. I'm really happy that that happened. I think it was a perfect way to end the first season here. And it's probably, I mean, as of now, it seems like there's a good chance this is going to be the only season, but it just depends. Like tonight, we're going to find out a bunch of stuff, right? There's going to be interviews about like, well, what's next, right? Like, I'm sure EW, Deadline, like everyone's going to have interviews with like Andrew Lincoln, Denai Guerrera, Scott Gimple, right? And they're going to be asking them like, so how did you think of this? Why was this important to you? And also just how, you know, like what is next? Like what is the future now for Rick and Michonne? And we're just going to have to wait and see what their response is. Because if their response is just like, yeah, you know, again, Gimple is probably going to say something like maybe they confirm a season 2. Maybe there's that. But ignoring that, Gimple's probably just going to say like, yeah, you know, anything's possible, this and that. Like we have some story that we can tell, this and that. And I think when it comes to Andrew Lincoln and Denai Guerrera, like that's where I'm really interested, you know, just in what they say. Because if they just say, no, this was it, like this, we just wanted to tell this. And now, you know, our story is over. Then I guess we're going to have to be like, okay, I guess that's it. But we're going to have to wait and see, you know, just exactly what they say. And that's what I'm going to be very interested in. Because if Andrew Lincoln says, no, you know, like I'm very interested in coming back, like I'm all about like ideas. If there's something very interesting, I'll come back. Then, yeah, then obviously this isn't over yet. We're going to see Rick and Michonne again at some point here. So I want to talk about everything that was sort of here in this episode. So obviously the story, in a sense, ends kind of open-ended because, you know, Daryl and everyone else weren't there in that final scene, right? Like, Beale, first of all, has spies throughout the entire world. Like, he mentions the continent, and then he mentions throughout the entire world. So now I'm really questioning the Walking Dead Daryl Dixon. I'm like, are the CRM over there? Because remember, like, the CRM, where this story ends here in the finale, everything's good in that sense, right? Like, the CRC took oversight of the Civic Republic military. And I've been getting a lot of questions about that. So the CRC is just the Civic Republic. Like, that is just the general Civic Republic, and the CRM is the Civic Republic military. And that's sort of always been a known thing, is that the military of the Civic Republic is the bad part about it. It's just the military. It's the way that Beale is running everything, right? And Beale is going to have followers, like definitely that's going to be a thing. I don't know if like in the future they could really get to a point where they overtake the CRM again or something like that. Like a lot of stuff like that, I just don't know if they're going to be able to get back to that. But I've always sort of like, this was the one thing that I said like a month or two ago, or the last, I don't know how long, is that, you know, I never really believed in the Commonwealth versus the CRM. That I never believed in. What I believed in more was the CRM versus Madame Genet because of what she's doing, right? Like the Commonwealth never stood a chance because they're smaller than Portland and Omaha, right? But the CRM versus Madame Genet and what she's doing with variant walkers, that could be a really interesting storyline right there. Like that could be a big part to the whole end game here. So all of Beale's spies and stuff with the CRM, you know, I'm sure they're going to obviously like support, you know, what he does. There's still a triple P card and what that means. Maybe that is related to the fact that, you know, the triple P card is sort of a spy thing, right? And that's like they're Beale spies, right? And they're sort of throughout the world, you know, watching over big communities and ready to sort of influence people to do this and that and sort of control communities and all of that throughout the world. Like that's what Beale literally says in this episode. So I wonder if in future seasons now there's going to be mentions of that. You know, in Dead City, there's like, you know, the Dama, right? Like, does she have a connection with Beale in that sense? There's a lot of questions I have now, and I feel like this was Gimple's way in keeping the CRM still around like this. But again, the main CRM city is still really good. It's just not going to be in that scale that we thought, right? But I still think an end game eventually at some point could still happen where you do have the CRM versus Madame Genet and her group. There was also the fact that, Major General Beale's son is still alive. Like, he could also be, a leader in a lot of this here, because is he just going to accept that? Obviously not. Like, there's a story that could be told there. If you remember, Rick Grimes in the comic, and I guess this is kind of spoilers for the comic, even though that happened years ago, but Rick Grimes dies in the comic by Sebastian, who is obviously Pamela Milton's son. He was just a horrible person, and yeah, he was just mad one day and he just killed Rick Grimes. I could see Mason Beale, who is Major General Beale's son, playing a similar role to Sebastian at some point, and maybe that's how Rick dies, right? Again, that would happen way in the future, but there's something there. Like, you could do something there where you can borrow that comic storyline there, right? Because there's a lot of stuff with Rick in the comics that they still haven't gotten to yet. And also just the whole thing about, was Beale right about his 14-year plan? Or not his 14-year plan, because he has a 500-year plan, but he said that humanity was going to go extinct in 14 years, and it's because of everyone using all the resources. Like, that's just going to be a question that we all have. Was Beale right about that, or was he lying, right? We're never going to know, because Rick didn't believe him. And so that just, that kind of ended things there. The one thing I will say, if you actually look at Tales of the Walking Dead, there was an episode there where it focused on literally, I think there was just 2 survivors in that episode, and it really looked like no one was around. The episode was just like nothing. And that episode was set 35 years into the apocalypse. I think right now we're about 13, 14, 15 years into the apocalypse. Go 14 years more. You're roughly 30 years in, and this episode's 35 years in, so it's even further. And if you look at that episode, no one's really alive. No one's really around anymore. So was Beale right? And I remember Gimple talking a lot about that episode and stuff, and there was going to be things that happened. And I just, after we got this, it's really interesting now looking back at that episode. Like, I'm wondering if he was actually hinting at something there. So I don't know. Was Beale right about all of this, right? Like, there is a lot to this whole thing that I'm really curious about. But I also, just ignoring the CRM, because there's a lot of that, and there could be some connections with Madame Genet and a lot of the Variant Walker stuff. Ignoring all of that, though, there's still personal family stuff, right? The Grimes family has had a lot of trauma and all of that. And I think people would be very interested in seeing the story play out, where a lot of these characters just kind of worked stuff out. You focused on really just reconnecting, like Rick and Judith, right? And also forming a connection with Rick and RJ, right? Because everyone, I think, really loves the scene with Judith and Rick, because it was the first time that Kaylee Fleming and Andrew Lincoln actually had a scene together. And it was really interesting, because this version of Judith is obviously like the most popular version. People love this character. She's sort of the new Carl. Beforehand, I mean, she was played by a bunch of different actresses. So obviously, like, yeah, and she barely had any lines. But Judith back then, the whole thing with her story was just, they were trying to keep her alive. And, she had that connection with like Lori and like the past and all of that, right? And so when you see Rick and Judith together, there's just so much history between these two characters here that I'm just like, I'm not satisfied with what we got in that ending scene. As happy and amazing as it was, I want to see these characters talk about more stuff and just experience more things. Like, we got a lot of really amazing, emotional moments in The Ones Who Live. They could do the same thing here in a season 2, or if they were to do something else, like, they could do more here. So I think that would be really incredible. And again, coming up with different sort of drama with everything, I think that's where it does get very interesting, because I know that Scott Gimple did say that he has the next story. Like, that was sort of the whole thing here, is that Scott Gimple was asked, I don't remember which interview this was, but he was asked about the possibility of, continuing the story after this. And he said something like he knows the next story and then the next story after that, but, we're a band and it depends on, like, AMC, Andrew Lincoln, and Denai Guerrera. So I think for Gimple, he knows what he can do next with this story. It's just, it depends on everyone else. And from what everyone has been saying, Denai Guerrera, she's just been more like, we'll see where this lands, and, anything is possible in terms of doing like an endgame series or this and that. And then Andrew Lincoln is like, I'm just all about ideas right now, and I just want to be around, good people and having all these creative ideas and this and that. So I think the option is still there. It's just, is that where we're going to be left off after the finale airs tonight? Like, what's going to happen after tonight? In all those interviews, are we going to get any sort of indication that they can do more? And then the question I have is, we've got the happy ending here, so can you just leave it here? I think a lot of fans want them to just sort of leave it here, but that's also kind of a big part to it too, because there's a huge part of the fan base that doesn't. They want more Rick and Michonne, you know, and I'm happy that they got their happy ending here. Honestly, it's a perfect way to end season 1, but I would really like to see more scenes between Rick and Judith and getting a lot more there. So it's all about, you know, what they want to do next, but in terms of what the story is right now, and obviously Madame Janae is like a big threat and stuff out there. The story right now really is Rick and Michonne are alive and they're just out there in the world. And so what happens to their story overall, right? And when Daryl goes back eventually, he's going to want to go and see Rick. And so that is sort of the next place for, I guess, the Walking Dead Daryl Dixon, right? Is like, how do you sort of tell that story and eventually lead to that point? Is that the end game for the Walking Dead Daryl Dixon? I don't see AMC having just 2 shows out right now, like just having Daryl Dixon and Dead City. There's no way there's going to be just 2 shows. So I think they could announce another spinoff with just, you know, other characters or something, or maybe there is a way that they want to continue the story, because the ratings for The Walking Dead: The Ones Who Live was honestly amazing. And there's a lot of people that aren't satisfied with the ending, you know, just the way that everything was sort of told and stuff. And people want more. People definitely want a lot more. So I'm interested in just how things are going to play out. You know, it's still a little too early to sort of know. People are going to feel how they're going to feel after the finale. And I want to see what Gimple and everyone else says. But as time goes on, after a week or two, people are probably going to be like, wait, you know, you probably could do this, or maybe you could do this, right? Or maybe not. Maybe people are just like, no, actually, no, I'm happy. I don't want to see Rick and Michonne again. So we'll have to wait and see, right? I don't know where this is going to go overall, but there's still, as I pointed out in this video, there's a lot of things that they could actually still explore here. It's just the story is going to be very different than we thought. So again, I don't know if there's going to be a season 2, or I don't know what there is going to be next, but there's clearly more. It's just the Rick and Michonne part, right? Like, are they going to come back at some point? They definitely will. They will come back at some point. It's just that it might be in like Daryl Dixon season 4 or 5, right? You know, if that show ends then, or if there's an endgame series, right? Where maybe variant walkers eventually come over to America and all of that. And again, there's still CRM stuff that they were still testing walkers and all of that. Like, there is a lot of stuff that was still going on there. Like, I think people are focusing on the fact that everything's good now. Yes, everything is good, but there was still a bunch of stuff that they were trying to do. And also, do you really think everyone's just going to go along with everything? Like, there's no way that's just going to happen. You know, I think this season focused on, you know, really defeating the enemy. And as much as I do disagree with it, they did. But there's little things here and there that obviously, if you wanted to sort of focus on that, you could, right? So we'll have to wait and see what they say, but I'm going to be very interested in sort of the reaction by everyone tonight. So post all your thoughts down below. Where do you think the story could go next? Do you think there's going to be a season 2 now? I feel like as of now, personally, I'm leaning more towards no, there's probably not going to be a season 2, but we'll have to wait and see what they say, right? Because everyone wants more. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. So anyways, I'm gonna leave it here. Definitely post all your thoughts down below. Hope you guys all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.